Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Doors Chapter 3 is my personal favorite, but 4 is an incredibly close runner-up, especially since the remake considerably reduced the amount of Twilight Trail backtracking, the one major complaint I had about it in the original version, by adding a fancy new warp pipe to this vacant old house. I would also say that while 3 probably boasts the darkest standalone side story, 4's got the most overtly dour atmosphere, rivaled only by the final chapter. I mean, the mayor's name is literally dour. We've got to give it to For Pigs the Bell Tolls, the second Ernest Hemingway reference in Paper Mario, the first being the bumpty penguin novelist Herringway from the N64 game Shiver City. And like the spirit of that deceased Toad inhabiting Cabin 4 on the XS Express, this is another instance of 4 representing death, a well-known superstition in Japan I spoke about in episode 1. In order to even get to this morose municipality, Mario must travel down a special orange-colored cross-hatched pipe that'll reject anyone who doesn't have something with their name written on it. This information is learned by Darkly, the lover of dark places who hails from Twilight Town, but opts to loiter in the shadows behind Merlin's place in Rogueport these days. I'd say he fits right in. Darkly Aspects over here helps Mario by writing the plumber's name on the seat of his overalls, and our partner's name on their polka dot diaper pants. As suggested by the name, Twilight Town is stuck in a perpetual state of twilight. It's first presented to us with a shot of a magenta to orange-yellow gradient sky, with a stunning moon hanging above a long line of bare trees in the distance. As the camera pans down, we see dead leaves floating on by, and Mario emerges to be welcomed by a local named Gloomer, who says it's a bad time to arrive. This doesn't mean anything special by itself, but the line is made especially funny because of all the male Twilighters were given a voice very reminiscent of a certain blue-eyed Undertale character. I wonder if the sound designers did that on purpose. Visually, they all look like living hand-sewn dolls wearing hoods with shadows covering half of their faces, which complements the creepy aesthetic. The mayor introduces himself by stating that he isn't exactly the sharpest fellow, and I think that's because you have a few stitches loose, dude. Look, poor guy's even got some fluff exposed through the busted seams on top of his head. Anyway, Gloomer warns that the bad time they're about to have is too scary a tale to tell. But we know it involves the giant bell at Creepy Steeple, because he panics when it rings, wondering who it's going to be next, before exploding into a purple cloud that dissipates to reveal a swine in the spot where Gloomer once stood. You see, whenever the bell tolls, a resident is chosen at random to be poofed into a pig. It's implied from partner dialogue that visitors are at risk of being oinkified as well, but this sadly cannot happen to our main characters, no matter how long the player dawdles. I think that would have been a nice addition to the handful of non-standard game overs TTYD is so fond of. That being said, Mario's party does meet many more NPCs who become bores as part of the plot, like the mayor himself, and this gatekeeper who initially blocks access to the path ahead, but can do nothing to stop progress when he's reduced to trotting on all fours. While the newly orchestrated rendition of the town tune has grown on me, and I do think I prefer it overall, I'll admit that the original sounds far scarier. The song on GameCube had the shrill, eerie chords played alongside what sounds like a theremin with occasional chimes and a constant vibraphone in the background. The instrumentation was rather sparse, giving each one a separate emphasis that made for a piece that was altogether semi-discordant and unnerving. The updated track brings in a slew of new instruments for a much fuller sound, like an accordion that gives it a very Nightmare Before Christmas feel. Vocals are always appreciated, but I'm a bit torn on the strings in this case. It makes the piece sound somber and sad rather than spine-chilling in my opinion. Actually, back in 5th grade I remember the original really freaking out one of my friends. The combination of the music and general vibe of the place was so upsetting to them that they had their mom, who was luckily also really into Nintendo games, play Chapter 4 in their stead. The fact that Gloomer and Eve, the mother of 3 I mentioned in the last video, are the only Twilighters you can actually witness transforming firsthand is played with quite well. We're told by the teary-eyed wife of the Twilight shop manager that he went into the woods yesterday to collect herbs, but a pig came home instead of her husband. She blames herself because they got into a fight, and she had called him a chauvinist pig before he left, but now he really is one. I know I keep talking about how surprised I am at this dialogue, but really, seeing chauvinist pig in a Mario game definitely made me do a double take. In a funny twist, this pig isn't actually her husband at all. It's Dupree, the flirty Disco Dugan, which, alongside the Traveling Sisters 3, proves the theory that anyone visiting here can be subject to the curse. Even as a literal pig, Dupree must have been drawn into the shop by the fetching young woman, because if we trust what he's saying, everything that's happened to him upon arriving in town via the pipe is fuzzy. I won't talk too much more about this, better save it in case I bring back my Nintenuendo series, but the shopkeeper must have walked in on this younger, kind of handsome Elvis impersonator about to make some moves on his wife, because the two of them will be fervently quarreling once the curse is lifted. He's scared to ask what his spouse and Dupree were doing in here while he was gone, but ultimately nothing happened. She just makes a joke about trading her husband in for this strapping young fellow. But who's responsible for turning Twilight Town into one big pig pen anyway? That'd be a supposed monster who's taken up residence at the top of the bell tower. Since the air of this place is so fearful, you might be expecting some nightmarish creature to be responsible for tormenting the townsfolk. But like the crazy daisies of Twilight Trail, there's a bit of mood whiplash in the boss's design. Rather than a ghastly ghost, a la Bogmire of Luigi's Mansion, this enemy, whose name is a complete mystery, even to Goombella's all-knowing Book of Tattles, is a bedsheet ghost in the vein of Scooby-Doo's The Phantom of Haunted Isle. Except made even sillier because he's rocking a wizard-slash-party hat with a very stylish blue bow tie. He belongs to a Paper Mario exclusive species called Duplighost, first introduced in the N64 game mainly as tricksters who deceive travelers by shapeshifting into people familiar to them. There are friendly Duplighosts, as evidenced by Lee, a student of the Toadmaster, but nevertheless, in battle, they take advantage of their ability to create complete copies of Mario's friends, even down to their movesets. It's no different in TTYD, though this baddie without a name chooses to become a clone of Mario himself, in a more cinematic cutscene where the camera zooms in intensely and his eyes glow red. A magic ring then scans Mario from head to toe, and when the ghoul reappears, he's taken the shape of Mr. Video, albeit all purple, like he's a perfect shadow of Mario. He speaks with a deeper, echoey Charles Martinet voice that sounds like a deranged Mickey Mouse. And unlike the real deal, his dialogue implies that he makes this annoying yuck 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 laugh. The fight proceeds as usual. Mario beats the imposter, who collapses and relinquishes the Ruby Star, while the typical celebratory end of chapter cleared sequence plays out. But something's not quite right. First of all, this has been the shortest chapter by far. The narration even lampshades this fact by stating, "At this rate, Mario's quest to collect all 7 crystal stars will be done in no time." Secondly, I can see newcomers who aren't completely paying attention missing this, but quote-unquote Mario is off. He doesn't do his usual "yeah" when holding up the crystal star, and before walking over to collect it, you'll notice that he's uncharacteristically hunched over, just like our unnamed villain was as a Mario copy. Most striking though is the fact that the apparent real Mario's eyes have changed from cute thin ovals to wide, soulless black circles with faint red outlines that give the impression his body is being possessed. That's because it is, in a sense. Goombella throws an insult at who she thinks is the fainted doppelganger, and the pair head back to town, but there isn't any kind of a transition. The camera doesn't move at all. As you see, this purple shade is the genuine Mario. Now, I'm not going to argue that this is the most amazing narrative twist ever or anything like that, but as a kid, it was pretty mind-blowing to experience for the first time, and this concept is still really cool to me as an adult. Mario's voice, body, and even his name have been taken over by the boss, and while his partners are skeptical of their leader's new mannerisms, they haven't yet picked up on the fact that he's an imposter. The back-to-normal Twilighters are none the wiser and commemorate their supposed savior with high praise. The mayor even hosts a feast in his honor, the main course being a pig roast. Here we go again with the developer's morbid jokes. I thought being able to feed the family whose mother just became a pig with a hot dog was bad. The legitimate Jumpman is largely ignored by everyone, now that he's become a literal shadow of his former self. The gatekeeper says that he looks kind of weird and that he'd classify him as a bad guy. This woman compliments hijacked Mario's sense of fashion, with a description that changes whether or not the players equip the W emblem, by the way, while lightly criticizing the plain purple person who stands before her. Some incredible, albeit easily missable new text comes from the Battle Master. If you speak to him as Shadow Mario, He'll say, "Don't think I seen your lack of mug before though. You got a name, tall, dark, and faceless?" Mario explains that his name was stolen, and the Battle Master responds with, "I'm gonna call you Nameless Frank for now." Between Murphy, Marty-O, Gonzalez, Slick, and now Nameless Frank, Mario's been called quite a number of unique names on this adventure with more to come. Anyway, the walk back to town is lonely, and the Twilight Town music doesn't even play when you get there. All of the background tracks have been replaced with ambient, cursed versions, adding to the unsettling feeling of it all. Right before that, a familiar face tears a hole in the sky, and that voice clip I mentioned earlier is used to great effect in reintroducing him. This dude taunts Mario, explaining that what he's done goes beyond simply changing his shape into anyone he wants. He's effectively replacing Mario by taking his name and body for himself, and that's turned the real hero into a shadow who can't use his own name. It means that he's stuck in Twilight Town until this gets resolved, because remember, you need a name to access the pipe. That begs the question, are they both trapped here for the time being, because this villain's name is currently obscured? Could he use the name Mario to leave right now, or would he have to first succeed in erasing the original to fully take his place? It's a scary thought. If he wasn't having so much fun teasing Mario and just did away with him immediately, I imagine the shadow we're currently playing as would fade into nothingness. Would the person who was Mario cease to exist, with the entirety of himself being irreversibly transferred over to the enemy? Do all Duplighosts have this power, or just I've got to wonder how many Duplighosts are out there who successfully stole the complete identity of a Toad or something, simply picking up where their lives left off. I don't know how much the writers actually thought of this, but it is chilling. Before that happens to Mario, there's got to be a way to undo this in the present, right? As I just mentioned, fake Mario has turned this into a game, and if the player can guess his real name, then he'll give up his hold on Mario's name and body. Hey, that's easy, I know his name already, it's Stupid. The problem is that even if you're replaying the game and have got it memorized, the lowercase p is unusable. This isn't just a letter of his name the developers arbitrarily removed though. An actual plot point is to retrieve the letter P this character stole from your keyboard. Okay, the name and body were one thing, but taking away my rights to a letter is one step too far. There's a lot of power in a name though, so fighting him without guessing is fruitless as he's become invincible to this nobody. For the time being, you're supposed to run away because you can't damage him yet, but I just so happen to have Luigi in my audience, so I wanted to see if he'd root for the real Mario. And would you look at that? Brothers do know best. He only cheers for the player, so he has to be the only person who has any kind of relationship with Mario, other than the identity thief of course, to know what's really going on here. I'd ask why Luigi can't just get up on stage and help him, but he's kind of supposed to be racing on Circuit Break Island right now anyway. We're not supposed to think too much about when he attends these shows. I think we're also supposed to look past the rare chance of him being eaten by a piranha plant if they're both in the crowd. Let's just consider ourselves brotherless, as well as bodiless for now, and take solace in the fact that there is at least one soul in this dreary place who can truly help out, beyond an encouraging fist pump. That future friend is a fellow Shadow, Vivian. In yet another little story twist, the youngest of the three Shadow Sirens Mario fought previously joins the good side. Though it isn't a heel-face turn, Vivian doesn't know she's helping Mario at first. The Shadow Trio is actually in Twilight Town to try and put an end to the hero's quest, with a lethal bomb. The Super Bomb is a weapon that looks suspiciously like a hand grenade with a massive blast radius. But the thing is missing, and it's broken. Beldum tries to gaslight Vivian into thinking she's the one who lost it, while also belittling her as usual, and leaves with Marilyn to take a supposed well-earned siesta, while the hapless fire mage is made to search for it lest she be punished again. Mario locates the busted-up bomb that's intended to be a deadly present for him, and even offers to fix it. I knew he was a jack of all trades, but I wasn't aware that Mario was a Bomberman too. Vivian tells him it's no use. I guess she's also an explosives expert, but thanks him anyway, and the two start to bond. She says Mario is the only person who's ever been kind to her, A disturbing thought. I know she's the youngest of the three shadows, but Beldam is over 1,000 years old. So I wonder how many hundreds of years Vivian has been alive with no one showing her respect. Despite the severity of his own problems, he stopped to hear about Vivian's, so she repays the kindness by partnering up with him. The endearing witch has no qualms about leaving her abusive sisters, and explains that their standard bullying has started to feel heavier after she realized she was their sister, not their brother. That's right. In the remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Vivian is revealed without a shadow of doubt to be a transgender woman. I was absolutely expecting Nintendo to keep her gender identity as vague as possible in an attempt to avoid any sort of controversy, but no! Here it is plain as day, or Twilight. Vivian is unquestionably a trans woman, and that fact has sparked a lot of discourse online. Some fans are convinced that the intention of the original Japanese GameCube version was for her to be an otokonoko, a Japanese term for men who express themselves in a traditionally feminine manner, i.e. cross-dressing. Now, I know this is a sensitive subject, so believe me when I say I took this research seriously. And I am confident that I have found an answer to the question of whether or not she was always intended to be trans. For this to be thorough, I had to take all mention of her gender into account, so I will start with every official claim that she is male before any rebuttal. Please hear me out until the time displayed on screen, and carefully listen to all of what I have to say on the matter before angrily heading to the comments section. Using text exclusively from the Japanese game scripts themselves, let's take a look at the following lines from TTYD and Super Paper Mario. Number 1. In TTYD's party member description, she's described as a feminine-looking boy. A direct translation of the Japanese text, courtesy of the cutting room floor, reads, "A former member of the Shadow Trio. He may look like a girl, but he's actually a boy." Number 2. Goombella quote-unquote corrects herself after quote-unquote mistaking him for a girl via her tattle. Translation: It's Vivian, a member of the Shadow Trio and the youngest sister, ... no wait, brother. Number 3. In Super Paper Mario, the follow-up to TTYD, Vivian's catch card deliberately describes the character as a boy. Translation: One of Mario's partners, introduced in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. A cute boy wielding fire magic who was once part of a group of enemies known as the Shadow Trio. That all being said, do you notice a pattern here? Not one of these 3 examples is information coming from Vivian herself. It's all through menu text or other characters speaking for her. What does Vivian have to say about her own gender identity in the original game? Well, her pronoun of choice is atai, which is generally used by female characters with rough, brash attitudes, and by some transgender characters. Clyde Mandolin, Legends of Localization. And Vivian affectionately refers to their group as the Shadow Sisters, a fact that angers Beldam, who reminds her that she is a quote-unquote man, as an insult because it upsets Vivian. She's identified as a woman since the beginning, with everyone else labeling her as a man. And you know what? That's wrong. You have to remember that this game was released in the early 2000s, so Goombella and the menu descriptions having mislabeled her are prime examples of the outdated ways in which transgender characters have often been depicted in the past. Sadly as a joke, in the vein of Birdo/Catherine in the Doki Doki Panic and Super Mario USA instruction manuals. Translation by the Mushroom Kingdom. He thinks he is a girl and he spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Kathy. Taking that all into consideration, I think it's obvious the original intention of the writers was always to depict Vivian as a trans woman. But what that means today is very different from what it meant 2 decades ago. Now, if you still aren't convinced that Vivian was trans in the original too, I will allow discussion about her gender identity in the comments. But if there is even a hint of transphobia in your response, I will delete it without hesitation, if the Beldam speech bubbles don't get there first. I have already had to do this several times in my episode on Paper Mario Color Splash, and that was the result of a non-serious joke I made about Bowser being an LGBTQ+ ally because he wanted a rainbow shell. I'm all for freedom of speech, but if you're just going to be mean, I will banish that free speech to the Shadow Realm. And that's where Vivian's veil leads, so you're gonna have to deal with her too. That was quite a tangent, so where were we again? Oh yeah, it's time to team up with an awesome new party member to put an end to the chapter boss's antics. Using Vivian's ability that conveniently paves a path forward, we finally learn Duplus's true name from his pet parrot. Stealing back the stolen P, that is not a sentence I thought I'd be saying today, I can now say without fear of censorship that his name is Duplus. Duplus the Duplighost. That Shine Get homage to the Japanese version of Super Mario Sunshine is brilliant too. In fact, the birds in this game seriously have some of the best lines of dialogue ever. These learned crows, for example, discuss how depressed they are about the depletion of fossil fuels, and the dire need to look for a renewable energy source. This text was left unchanged, which is equal parts impressive and sad, because it just goes to show that nothing's changed in 20 years. With the monster's name in our brain, heading back and spelling it out for him, with the once rigged keyboard causes Duplus's black holes for eyes to turn all white. And the camera zooms in closer and closer as he shakes in surprise, mouth agape. The screen then starts flipping around rapidly with a ghosting effect, as he screams again and again repeatedly before jumping in a panic and hightailing it back to his hideout. Vivian should know by now just by looking at him that she's helping Super Mario get his body back, but it doesn't hit her until his name is spoken out loud atop the bell tower preceding the true showdown. Vivian leaves before the rematch begins, but only temporarily, as she comes back upon realizing that Mario's the best companion for her. Fun fact, in the original GameCube version, if you were strong enough to finish this fight before Vivian rejoins Mario, the boss battle would end and she'd just be by his side like nothing happened. This cutscene of her declaring that she's officially switched sides can be totally missed. This was cleverly fixed in the Switch version. Finishing Duplus off solo Shadow style results in him using a life mushroom to revive. He will not pull this card under any other circumstance, so it's a quirk unique to defeating him early. I personally think that the battle is a little too easy overall anyway, but you can make things more challenging by only attacking Duplus once all of his accidental betrayal partners have been knocked out. This doesn't really do anything for the player, as causing Mario's friends to faint understandably doesn't award any experience points, but you do get flavor text where they apologize for failing him, and Duplus cruelly just groans in frustration. The first time you give the actual boss a good smack, he'll say this awkward line exclusive to the remake. What? Damage? Gah, that's right! You guessed my name and now stuff hurts sometimes. I guess it helps reaffirm the fact that his powers of invulnerability do indeed come from keeping his name a secret. I imagine it's a fortifying magic spell that can only be broken by guessing it. If that idea seems pretty random to you, I will say that it makes much more sense when you consider his name in Japanese, Ranperu, or Rumpel, short for Rumpelstiltskin, which is of course a German fairy tale where an imp lays claim on the firstborn child of a miller's daughter, unless she can guess his name within a certain amount of days. Rather than from a parrot, she learns his name straight from the horse's mouth, when he reveals it in a song with lyrics gloating about how she'll never guess the name Rumpelstiltskin. Felling the counterfeit Mario, and knockoff Rumpelstiltskin, finally dispels the illusion. His partners are shocked to see that they've been fighting on the wrong side all this time. I mean, you'd think that them being on stage left, the enemy side, rather than right for the encounter would be enough of an indication, but as you're more than likely aware, there's a lot in this chapter that doesn't make the most sense. How is the shopkeeper able to keep track of Mario's points when he's a shadow? I'd say let's just chalk it up to more video game logic and move on. Duplus gets angry, flying out of the window like in the Grimm's fairy tales in their original form version of the story, minus riding a cooking ladle. Mario's friends apologize profusely for mistaking their dear Mario for another, and are hesitant about Vivian at first, but agree to welcome her to the party after he sticks up for her. What of Duplus? Well, the 3 shadows are down to 2 now, so Beldam and Marilyn add him to their ensemble. And that actually pans out quite well for them because his identity theft shenanigans will cause a whole lot of trouble in the chapters to come. His trickery may not be over, but this video is. I know I said last time that I'd cover chapter 5 in this episode, but I wasn't anticipating having just so much to say about this arc. I promise we'll get to Bobbery and his sweet Scarlet next time on Dark Aspects. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you next time.